Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and start the program. And first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming today and celebrating Karen's life. It's a great life to celebrate, and we're very excited about sharing this with her family and her friends. So, good afternoon and welcome to the new UAB School of Nursing. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For those that I have not had the opportunity to meet, I'm Doreen Harper, and I'm Dean of the School of Nursing. And I am so very grateful that you have chosen to join us to celebrate the life and legacy of our beloved Dr. Karen Meneses, Professor and Associate Dean for Research and Scholarship in the School of Nursing. And she had multiple other appointments in all of the research centers here on campus, but her primary focus was in the Minority Health Research Center and the Comprehensive Cancer Center, I would say. But she was an amazing leader, and most importantly, a cherished mother, grandmother, daughter, sister, aunt, mentor, colleague, and friend. And what a great person. It's such a privilege to share this afternoon with members of Karen's family that are here with us today, her partner and teammate, Pat McNeese, her daughter, Lauren, her granddaughter, Madeline, her sisters, Xenia and Sonia, and her brother, Tony. And Pat's sons, Colin and Clark, who are here from Seattle, and also Pat's brothers and sister, Eddie, Mike, and Paula, and their husbands and sons. We're all here to celebrate Karen Meneses' life, and what an inspiration. But before we start, I want to UAB Health System Chaplain Malcolm Marler will offer a special prayer. We're glad you're here, Malcolm. Thank you.
Let us pray together. God, we thank you that you are always with us and that you love us and never leave us alone, no matter what we are going through. Today we pray that you would remind us that you are the Good Shepherd above us, watching over us, that you are below us, ready to lift us up, especially in our weakest moments, that you are behind us when we want to turn back, that you are in front of us, calling us forward in faith, even when we cannot see the way, that you are beside us, holding our hand no matter what we are going through, especially grief. But most of all, remind us that you are within us as close as every breath we take. And that, my brothers and sisters, makes all the difference. Amen.
Thank you, Malcolm. You know, I still find myself mystified that our first event in this new Leadership Institute is celebrating Karen's life. Her leadership impacted nursing, science, and cancer survivorship worldwide. And believe me when I say we have heard from the world, from the east to the west, from the north to the south. We've heard from her professional organizations, her colleagues, her students, her mentees, all of whom are mourning her loss. You know, Karen's definition of leadership wasn't out of any playbook. She was an optimistic person, appreciative of all people, and Karen always sought to make the days better for those around her. I will share with you that I had the privilege of spending about 15 hours with Karen the week before she went on vacation to go to Disney World. And actually, Madeline was here with her, and we just covered this building from top to bottom in every new space that existed. Now, you have to understand that our Office of Research and Scholarship was up the hill in Medical Towers, which are very different digs. And so she was so excited about coming. She was packed, etc. And what I can share with you was she was so excited about this space and the opportunity it was going to afford the students and the faculty and the staff and the community. And you're sitting in a room where the community can come together. You know, Karen was taking her programs out to the mega churches and big areas where she'd have to rent space. And I said, Karen, you won't have to rent space here, I promise. So I think she knew that this was a place where her programs could continue to grow and flourish. When I introduced Karen at the Distinguished Faculty Lecture a little over 2 years ago, I said, to know Karen is to love her. So that I know this is why so many of us have assembled here today to share our love for Karen and celebrate her life. Karen, first and foremost, was dedicated to her family, her daughter Lauren, her brothers and sisters, her mom, her dad, her nieces and nephews, and of course, her Pat, who wooed here. He helped me woo her here to Alabama. I know he did. She loved to share her stories of her dear granddaughter, Madeline, who we all nicknamed Little Karen, right, Madeline? And this summer, when Madeline was spending time here in Birmingham with Karen, we got to see a lot of her, which was fabulous. Raised in St. Louis as the second of 5 children, Karen was recognized as a leader among her sisters and brothers, always caring for them and sticking up for them when they needed her most. And I heard a great story from Sonia about that. Her 40-year career spanned Washington, D.C., Georgetown University, Boston College, Beth Israel, Mass General, the University of Central Florida College of Nursing, and finally we got her here to UAB. Karen dedicated her professional life to research, scholarship, mentoring students and young scientists, and translating her work in cancer control, focusing on our most vulnerable populations. I actually spent some time this morning because I wanted to be with her, and I went on the video from the National Academy of Science and Medicine, where she actually gave testimony a couple of years ago. And the testimony was actually about how she targeted populations that were underserved, the populations nobody else targeted. So she is best known for her groundbreaking research in cancer survivorship with the underserved. In fact, she is one of the few researchers who took research one step further into the community in her work. Internationally, she was known for her willingness to help other scientists, and her research on survivorship and quality of life has not only advanced the frontiers of science, but translates essential knowledge to underserved women with breast cancer and their families across the Deep South. Karen used to take trips down to the Black Belt, and it was not uncommon for her to roll up her sleeves and participate in clinical activities with her students and study participants. And she would come back every time with an aha. You know, I learned this when I went down there. We haven't even thought about that. How do we translate this into the care we provide these women? She also made significant investments in the lives and education of UAB students and faculty, striving to impact health for all people. Karen did develop a special bond and interest in caring for young women with breast cancer. And there's a wonderful story from one of her well-known, internationally renowned colleagues, Jay Harris from Harvard, who actually had Karen write the chapter in his radiation oncology book for the 4 editions that were out on nursing care of patients with radiation. But Jay actually described how when she was a young nurse in 1982 on the radiation oncology unit at the Beth Israel, where she teamed with physicians, nurses, and the fellows in training. And she actually, in 1982, wrote her first evidence-based paper on the treatment of moist desquamation for radiation therapy that was then published in Oncology Nursing Forum. So she went to conference and she distributed the copies of her papers to the fellows and instructed them to jot down the information on a 3x5 index card so that they would have a handy reference when talking with patients. She started young and she sustained it. She had an exemplary record of sustained public service. In 1992, the President's Cancer Panel of the National Cancer Institute created the Special Commission on Breast Cancer. She served as a member of this commission for more than 10 years on the CDC Advisory Panel, the National Advisory Council at NIH. I could go on and on and on in terms of her service. But at this time, I want to invite several of Karen's dear friends and colleagues forward to share stories of her leadership legacy that Karen left with us. So Marie Bikaitis, a well-known cancer and palliative care researcher whom Karen helped me recruit from Dartmouth, will share Karen's impact on oncology.
Thank you, Jody. As Dean Harper said, Karen and I first met in Boston. We were both young, we still are, young oncology nurses. And I guess we thought we could conquer the world. One of us succeeded in doing that. I was asked to speak about Karen as both her friend and colleague, but also to talk about her contributions to oncology nursing and really reflect on our relationship as a colleague. Now I'm going to be calling her Karen, not out of disrespect, but out of the ultimate respect. And what I mean when I say that is that when you hear names like Cher or Meryl, no one asks for the last name. We all know who we're talking about. In oncology nursing, Karen was one of those people. All you needed to know was her first name. Now, she had multiple last names, but we never needed to know any of them because we all knew who Karen was. In oncology nursing, as a direct result of the care that she provided at the bedside, Karen's name was synonymous with multiple firsts and reaching the top. I'd like to mention 4 of those areas. Nursing care of patients undergoing radiation therapy. In the late 1980s, Karen had an opportunity to be one of the first nurses in a radiation therapy department in Boston, and might I say the nation, because the role of nurses in this area was not yet a thing. But Karen joined a small and fierce group of colleagues, Laura Hilderly, Jennifer Buchholz, Roberta Stroll, to develop this role nationally. Together with colleagues, she wrote the first textbook on the topic of nursing care of patients receiving radiation therapy. Second was pregnancy after breast cancer. Karen listened to the women who were patients of hers talking about their fertility issues. And many thought, well, you should just be glad to be alive. But Karen heard their concerns as survivors and was one of the first nurses to bring the issue of pregnancy after breast cancer through her reviews and through her papers. And this was a topic that few nurses had yet to recognize as important. Third, survivorship. In 1990, Karen received the highest clinical honor in oncology nursing. And I'll let you do the math, but 1990, she was still very early in her career. This was the sharing lectureship. And actually, I had the pleasure to introduce her from the dais and watch 1,000 oncology nurses just rapt and hanging on every word Karen had to say. The topic of her lecture, the enduring seasons in survival. At that time in oncology nursing, nurses were still so wrapped up with technical care that survivorship was really a new thing for them. In fact, I reread her paper as I was preparing my remarks today, and I found her insights as relevant today as they were almost 30 years ago. She was certainly prophetic. And number 4, breast cancer issues in oncology nursing. Again, Karen wrote one of the first textbooks on breast cancer. She did some of the earliest research demonstrating the important role of oncology nurses in the survivorship phase. And of course, always ahead of her time, she focused her breast cancer work in populations of women with breast cancer that very few people were concerned about. These were women living in rural areas, young breast cancer survivors, survivorship in women of color. Not only was she the first, but as I said, she always reached the top. She started as a staff nurse and became a clinical specialist. She started as a faculty member and became a tenured endowed chair and associate dean. No offense to Dean Harper, but we felt as though associate dean for research was the top, not the dean. And we discussed that at length. She didn't just write a paper, she wrote textbooks. She received writing awards. She served as an associate editor or editor. She started new publications in oncology nursing. I was thrilled when she agreed to work with me on a new publication devoted to quality of life as an associate editor, because I knew she would be creative, she would get the job done, and we would all have fun doing it. She was not only a scientist, she was a member of and chaired NIH study sections, including a recent appointment, as you've heard, to the National Institute for Nursing Research on the National Advisory Council. Karen did not stop at discovery or dissemination. She was active in shaping policy in oncology and on oncology nursing, being appointed to the President's Cancer Panel and the National Cancer Advisory Board. At an institutional level, we could not have been more blessed or proud to have Karen as an oncology nurse co-chairing and representing nursing at the highest levels in the Cancer Center, in the Minority Health Research Center, and even in palliative care. She held the position to make sure that we still had it until I was recruited and assumed it in 2012. And as many of you know, at UAB, she was recently honored as a distinguished faculty lecturer, earning the highest distinguished award in an academic health center. At the heart of these achievements was her clinical passion to push herself and other nurses to strive for excellence in clinical, research, and educational pursuits. I'd like to close with a few reflections about Karen as a colleague. Even though in many ways we were friends and contemporaries, Karen to me, and I know to many of her colleagues and peers, was the ultimate mentor. As the word of Karen's death spread throughout the oncology nursing world, I heard from so many of her colleagues who, like me, were trying to grasp that our colleague was gone too soon. Many of them spoke or wrote to me about how much Karen contributed to the field and changed their career and their lives. But absolutely every single one of them shared a favorite story of Karen as a person. Showing up barefoot in a t-shirt to a hotel lobby when she overslept, probably the only time she was ever late. Another time wearing shorts and knee socks and looking like a teenager, laughing and playing with her daughter Lauren in the hotel swimming pool at the ONS Congress in between sessions, taking time to share wardrobe, decorating, eating, traveling, and cooking tips. When I first came here, she told me about all of the wonderful trips that she and Pat would take to find their little gourmet shops and other treasures on the back roads of beautiful Alabama, and how much they loved to shop and cook together. Now, these weren't casual conversations. She would make an appointment with you to help you plan your trip, your menu, your wardrobe, and she put as much passion, joy, and intensity into making us all comfortable in our personal lives as though she was helping you plan your next grant, paper, or your career. Shortly before her death, Karen and I were together at the annual Robert Wood Johnson Future of Nursing Scholars meeting in Minnesota. No offense to our mentees, but we had a love-hate relationship with the RWJ meetings. But I had the gift of her time as we snuck away from the students in the sessions and went back to her room, kicked off our shoes, put up our feet, had a glass of wine, and talked about our students, our research, and our future projects. But as always happened, when we had more than our 30-minute meeting to discuss the pressing issue of the day, our conversation drifted to the good old days in Boston, to family. She was always asking about everyone's family, remembering the last thing you said that you did or when you were going to see them again. She talked about how she would soon be seeing Lauren, her upcoming trip with Madeline to Disney, and of all things, gardening. We laughed about how we were two crazy old ladies trying to grow flowers and beautify our yards in the blazing heat of Florida and Alabama. She was sure the week before that her neighbors in Melbourne thought she was nuts, spreading mulch in 100-degree heat in her front yard because it looked so hideous. You remember that? We spent way more time than anyone should talking about the finer points of mulch versus pine straw, sprinklers, and which flowers would actually survive the southern heat. It was joyful, it was renewing. For me, it was a beautiful memory of my beautiful friend. She would be proud because over the last few weeks, I've mentally performed a content analysis of the recurring themes shared by Karen's colleagues about her. I'm going to share some of those with you. I don't have slides. Enduring, passion, charming, graceful, elegant, playful, classy, classic, a beacon shining the light forward to those who would follow, a pioneer, a game changer, caring, elegant, fountain of youth. Karen always showed up. Distinguished. I will close with words from Mother Teresa that remind me of Karen. She said, "There are many people who can do big things, but there are very few people who will do the small things." As a colleague, as a mentor, Karen did it all, big and small. Thank you.
It's an honor to share the impact that Dr. Karen Meneses had in Birmingham, her legacy. According to Proverbs 13, verse 22, the good leave an inheritance to their children's children. Karen's honor is seen in what she has left for those who follow. Madeline, Lauren, Patrick, her family, her chosen family, her friends and colleagues. Birmingham will always be indebted to Karen for her guidance, her wisdom, her infectious smile, her selfless enthusiasm, and her humility. Karen was always true to the Florence Nightingale Pledge and shared that vision of care for all, regardless of socioeconomic status, their culture, religion, or race. Dr. Karen Meneses was innovative and involved in many programs, initiatives, and educational programs in the community. Many were centered on breast cancer, involving not only the patient, but loved ones and caregivers. When Karen made Birmingham her home, she embraced its diversity and strategically engaged the community through volunteering many times outside the usual hours of the work week. She served on several advisory committees, sharing her expertise, and encouraged big, out-of-the-box ideas, many that have framed healthcare in this community. When the Women's Breast Health Fund was established at the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham, Karen served on the inaugural advisory committee. For 5 years, Karen was instrumental in assessing the breast cancer community and, based on the assessment, establishing grant-making guidelines for that fund. The initial grants and the required documentation of the barriers to success set the stage for the Breast Cancer Rehabilitation Survivorship Initiative, which is now branded Forge Breast Cancer Survivor Center, an unprecedented collaboration of all 5 health systems in the greater Birmingham area. That just hasn't happened, and I'm not sure it happens anywhere else in the United States. She was instrumental in the planning and developing the Forge model by serving on a leadership team which consisted of senior executives from every health system. She attended every monthly meeting and was an engaged, vocal, and a respected member of the team, sharing her vision of patient-centered care. Tip sheets and resources developed and tested through her breast cancer education intervention trial, which was funded previously by the NIH, are used by Forge now today to improve quality of life of survivors and their loved ones. Many of Karen's articles she co-authored are used by Forge, both in training their volunteers and educating clients. Dr. Meneses started the Young Breast Cancer Survivors Network in 2012, the first of its kind in the state. She planned and attended every annual conference, which was held on Saturdays, with Patrick at her side. The Young Breast Cancer Survivorship Initiative led to Survive All, a program that improves the quality of life for young breast cancer survivors and their loved ones by providing resources and support. Survive All partnered with the Gulf States Young Breast Cancer Network, a collaboration with LSU, the University of Mississippi, and UAB School of Nursing, which is funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Karen facilitated a caregivers retreat in 2009, another first of its kind in Birmingham. Dr. Beverly Laird, many of you may remember her. She was a nationally recognized breast cancer advocate, survivor, and a true leader, not just in our community, but in the nation. She recognized a need to support caregivers and investigated a leader for the program. Karen volunteered her assistance and solicited a team from the School of Nursing to execute the retreat. The greatest impact Karen personally had on my life was in 2010 when my daughter, Kristen, was diagnosed with a locally advanced breast cancer. I was employed with the School of Nursing at that time as a research assistant with the Rural Breast Cancer Survivors or Cancer Study led by Dr. Meneses, and Kristen was in the master's program at the School of Nursing and employed at UAB Hospital. Karen provided information, support, scheduling flexibility for me so I could continue to be her caregiver. Kristen's journey was another part of Karen's legacy. Kristen, with Karen's encouragement, returned to graduate school, receiving her doctorate from the UAB School of Nursing this month. In closing, the quality of a person's life affects her children for generations to come. Karen has graduated to glory, but not before shaping the future of nursing, service, and care. But the work isn't done. Karen would expect all of us to continue that legacy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my honor to say a few words on behalf of those of us who worked with Karen in the Office of Research and Scholarship, and those who worked for her on her research studies. We cannot fully celebrate Karen's life without mentioning the hard work and time she put into being a successful researcher and the tremendous impact that she had many individuals she mentored. She was successful in what she did because she led by example. She expected no more out of anyone than she did herself. As an inspirational leader, she set high standards for herself and those around her. It was not uncommon for Karen to push people out of their comfort zones to achieve bigger and better things. On more than one occasion, Karen has pushed me out of my comfort zone. One early Friday morning years ago, we passed each other in the hallway, and she stopped and said, "You know that grant we've been talking about? Well, it's due today at 5 p.m. I think if we worked hard, we can make the deadline." Now, in case you don't know, doing a grant from start to finish in one day is impossible, but not for Karen. And I couldn't say no to her, and she was just so confident that we could do it. Plus, I just didn't want to let her down. So, of course, we clear our schedules, we buckled down, we cracked it out, and we barely met the deadline. But long story short is, we actually got the grant. And that grant was a breast cancer survivor grant, and it supported 2 of her students, and it really exposed me to breast cancer survivorship, and it's some area that I want to continue to pursue. And so working with Karen, that was a really fun experience with her. And that's important because life as a researcher is difficult. The hours are long, the work is intense, and the rewards are elusive. For every published article and every funded grant, it is important to note that each success was a hard-won victory built on a mountain of rejection. To endure the inevitable obstructions and barriers, a researcher has to be slavishly driven by the belief that their research is meaningful. Karen was driven by her core passion to improve the lives of breast cancer survivors and their families. And she worked nonstop to conduct her research. She submitted many grants and many papers, and while there is no disputing that she was a successful researcher and prolific author, she got her share of rejections as well. However, you would never know it. I cannot think of a single time I ever knew of Karen feeling defeated, deflated, or demoralized by any impediment that came her way. She never gave up. It is an understatement to say that Karen was tough. She was indomitable. Karen taught us to be realist and accept that each no for what it was and to be prepared to deal with the rejections accordingly, which was to revise, resubmit, and if you have to, start over. It's just part of the process. And when you did get published or funded, Karen rejoiced. We lived for celebratory emails saying, woohoo. So Karen also loved and supported her staff. She was a strong leader with a strong vision and the ability to guide her staff in the same direction. She trusted her staff to support her and do their jobs. She valued the unique talents that each one of her staff possessed, and she fostered those talents. She believed in all of us, and it felt special. It built us up and made us stronger. Beyond our work relationships, Karen was also our friend. She had the uncanny ability to create unique intimacy with each of us. No matter how busy Karen was, she made the time to bond with her staff and just talk about life. For example, recently, Jennifer Frank was planning a trip to Disney World. She naturally went to the expert, Karen, about Disney World. Karen squeezed Jennifer into her insanely busy schedule to meet with Jennifer and to plan the itinerary for the trip. Karen made the time to do this because it was important. Angel Bailey recalls many a time when Karen would just stop everything in the middle of the day to ask Angel how she was doing. Angel said you really knew she meant business when she grabbed her arm and talked in a soft voice and really wanted to know how she was doing. If you spent any considerable time with Karen at work, you knew Karen was a walker, a very fast walker. You had to work hard to keep up with her. And if you could keep up with her, those walks were a good opportunity to bond with Karen. Sylvia Kamada can attest to that fact. She said Karen would always make walking fun, sharing about her shopping bargains, recent travels, and of course, we would always talk about work. On her last day at UAB, Karen took a break from working to sit down with Sheila Wallace to enjoy a slice of her birthday cake. Sheila will tell you that Karen had a huge piece of cake that day. The two of them sat together for a long time, just talking about life and eating cake. Taking the time to get to know us and to share and learn each other's stories was so Karen. She was interested in our lives, our families, our travels, our dreams, favorite restaurants, best recipes, and all the other little things that tie us together as friends. Right now, it's difficult to see how we're going to move forward into the future without Karen. But here's what I do know. We will work hard, we'll be productive, and we're going to make a difference in this world. We will honor Karen's memory by being the best we can be to mentor the next generation of scholars. We'll remember and treasure all the gifts she gave us and take time to connect with those around us. And occasionally, we'll have that huge piece of cake. All right, thank you.
I first met Karen in the fall of 2003 when I started working as a nursing instructor at the University of Central Florida. I remember hearing about this hotshot nurse researcher getting all the big grants and all the faculty awards. It wasn't long until we found each other. Well, it was more like her cornering me in the hallway one day and asking me to go to her office so she can talk to me about something important. Well, that something was about enrolling in the PhD program. She looked at me in the eye and said, "We Filipino nurses are some of the best in the world. And there are the exceptional few who should go beyond clinical care. You should do research." She told me that she'd heard about my academic pedigree and that I would make an excellent PhD student. I sat there thinking, no way, lady. I just finished my master's and I don't want to tackle school assignments ever again. So I politely told her that I would think about it and got out of there quickly. Well, the Karen that we all knew and loved meant that when she had her mind set on something, she didn't let it go easily. She was persistent, and it was her mission to have me enroll in the PhD program. After months of gently nudging me about it, and even getting our then dean of the UCF School of Nursing, Dr. Jean Lunar, who's in attendance here today, to also plant the seeds about the terminal degree, she again sat me down in her office, but this time she gave me the application form and essentially told me that I wasn't leaving her office without filling it first. So I did as told, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. Her almost coercive and conspiring tactics worked, and she saw the potential in me to go further with my education, and she guided me throughout my sometimes arduous 8-year journey. Even after she moved to UAB to take on the Associate Dean for Research position, She was only an email or a phone call away. I remember emailing her in a panic the morning of my oral candidacy exam, and she responded right away and said that I knew the literature more than anyone else in that room and that I should own it. After I graduated in 2013, I emailed her with a casual question about whether UAB was hiring because I didn't see anything advertised online. I attached a copy of my CV, and within 1 hour, I received a gleeful call on my cell phone asking, "Are you serious? Are you really considering moving away from your immediate family out of state?" I told her, yeah, I was ready for the challenge, learning to be a researcher at a top-notch academic medical center. And if I could continue working with her, I knew that I would thrive. She excitedly told me that she's printing copies of my CV and giving it to the dean. 2 hours later, Dean Harper called me. That was a Friday night. On Monday morning, I had a preliminary phone interview with the search committee. And by Wednesday morning, I was in front of the faculty presenting and getting to know the people in organization. 6 days after sending her that casual email, I said yes to Dean Harper and moved my family to start a new life here in Birmingham. And it has been quite a thrilling ride these past few years, with Karen as the one major player in my successes and the biggest cheerleader when the denial letters came. And those are plentiful in academia. She was not only my mentor, she also filled other roles in my life. She was a doting mother. When my own mother died in January of 2016, 6 weeks after I gave birth to my second son, she coordinated a meal delivery schedule so that faculty and friends could drop off meals to our house, knowing that cooking would be one less thing that I had to worry about while I grieved for my mother and cared for a newborn and an 8-year-old. She even cooked a traditional Filipino dish for me because she knew that I was homesick. She was also a wise older sister. When I first came to Alabama, she gave me a list of people and places to see to help me transition into a new town. The list included pediatricians, hairstylists, nail salons, and restaurants. Who does that? Karen did. She was a supportive colleague who saw the potential in others when they may not see it themselves. She elevated others and took incredible pleasure when her colleagues and students are recognized for their hard work. Lastly, she was my dear friend. She told me all about how to maximize my time in Disney when I vacationed there with family in December. We all know she's a Disney expert. We both joked that maybe she should be a Disney planner when she retired from nursing. We had wonderful work lunches where she would map out my entire career trajectory while she introduced me to different local restaurants and we talked about our families. She was the most accomplished person I knew, and yet you wouldn't know it because she had no ego about her. She was always kind, generous, humble, and warm. When people liken me to a mini Karen professionally, right, Madeline? It is the best compliment that I could ever get. Our last email was a few days before she died. I was in Australia vacationing while she was in Orlando. And I was excited to share with her that my first NIH application was scored and the percentile was high. She was quick to respond and tell me that she was proud of me. Someone told me last week that perhaps she was done with what she needed to accomplish on this earth. But I sure don't feel that way. After 15 years of knowing her, I still had so much to learn. I even have notes that says, "Do not cry," and to breathe. Even though my time with her was cut short, I will honor her legacy by continuing to work hard and improve the lives of people around me. Now I thank her for being my guardian angel. And on December 18th, I will celebrate her birthday along with my sons. They share the same birthday. As a tribute to her, I would like to sing a song for her. The story behind this is that she used to tell me that if nursing doesn't work out for me, I should be a singer. Always a backup plan for Karen. She knew that I sang a little, and I told her, well, we're Filipinos. We can all sing. She said that that stereotype actually didn't fit her because she can't sing. So I told her that I would be honored to sing for her during her retirement party. I already had the perfect song picked out. This song is about how certain people are meant to enter and enrich our lives. She was that person for me and for many people in this room. So even though she's not here physically, I hope she's listening. And I sure hope I don't cry in the middle of it, because singing and crying do not go well together. God help me. If you know the song, feel free to sing along. The words will be up on the screen, just like a big karaoke party, to celebrate her Filipino heritage. We all love karaoke. This song is called For Good from the musical Wicked. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets the golden halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind of the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blame me for. But then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets the boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say been changed for the better. I do believe I have been changed for the better. And because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
So Karen was right again. She could have had a second career. Thank you, Sigrid. It means a lot and so fitting. I wondered if, we've heard some incredible stories about Karen, but I wondered if it would be okay if Patrick could come forward, if you're up to it, Patrick. You think you will? Okay. You're not sure. It's okay.
I'm Patrick Lees, those of you that don't know me. And to all of my friends in the School of Nursing, I do have a faculty appointment in nursing. And thank you all for being here. For my friends and supporters in health professions, Madeline, you'll be pleased to know that Dean Jones is considering a new certificate in ice cream scooping because of the last 2 summers that you've spent scooping ice cream. All of you, thank you very much. What I'd like to start after that performance, I'm having a little bit of a hard time just getting composure. Karen and I called this showtime, and showtime was always get your act together, say something that might make a difference, make it short, and get to the point. And as I thought about, well, what's the point of all this today? And I started thinking about who's in the audience, and I'm going to miss some people, but I want to show you the diversity of the kinds of people that made a difference, where Karen made a difference in their lives, or in some way we made a difference in their lives. For example, we have the CEO of a biotech diagnostic company from Huntsville, actually from Nashville. Joel, thank you for being here. We have the CEO of a pharmaceutical company from Montego Bay, Jamaica. Guna, thank you. I saw you come in. Thank you, sir, for coming. We have a dean. We have a former provost. We have a former president. We have a former vice president of research. I've been contacted. The last 2 contacts I had before I walked in the room were from Vienna, Austria, and Hong Kong. The reach that Karen had was incredible, and it went way beyond nursing. It went way beyond oncology. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to collaborate on a project, and the project involves some immunotherapy technologies, one out of Memorial Sloan Kettering, one out of Fred Hutchinson Cancer Institute, and one out of Seattle Children's Research Institute. Those technologies were ones that were extremely complex in terms of the time that we were doing that. Trying to figure out how to put those together, doing the scientific diligence on it. But I had a secret weapon, and the secret weapon was Karen. I could sit around the dining room table and I could ask Karen, who is it for this particular slice of it that we can get? And she said, well, it's Rick Klauser, for example, in this particular case. Well, Rick's on their board, so I can't use Rick. Who else can we get? But having that type of person that was there, and Dodie mentioned our team, our partnership, it truly was a partnership as far as I saw it. I was the lesser of the two. But Karen was always, as David had said, gentle but firm. The firmness came out in a lot of different ways. My mother died a few years ago. And I've told this story before, so some of you have heard it, forgive me. I was kind of charged or took the responsibility of integrating a fairly significant story about my mother for a eulogy at her funeral. The morning of the funeral, I was out in the front yard of my parents' home walking around, and Karen came out and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not okay. I don't know if I can actually pull this off. I don't know if I can maintain my composure for such an intricate, long story." Karen, being a bit shorter than I was, looked up at me, and I know some of you have seen those eyes where they get small and squint, and she looked right up at me, and she pointed her finger, and she says, "You let me tell you something. You have been prepared for this moment all of your life. You've been prepared by some very strong women, my grandmother, my mother, and so on and so forth, Karen being arguably stronger." With her finger still pointed up, she says, "You will not wimp out now." And so I keep hearing after Sigrid's presentation and song and following her, I said, "I don't know if I can do this," but I heard Karen saying, "You will do this. You will not wimp out now." Dodie mentioned, Dean Harper mentioned Jay Harris, renowned cancer researcher, clinician. I'm going to tell you some things that maybe you don't know. You know a lot of you know Karen. George Bush appointed Karen to the National Cancer Advisory. She advised a couple of presidents, but President Bush appointed her to the National Cancer Advisory Board. She served for 6 years. During that time, a guy named Harold Barmas was the director. Harold's a Nobel laureate. And Harold can be kind of crusty. But Karen developed a role on the NCAB. When the meeting was getting off course, when things weren't going the way they should, Harold would turn to the dean, that's what he called Karen, and he would say, "Let's let the dean get us back on course here." And then apparently Karen did a fair job, I heard from more than one source, at doing that. But the essence of Karen, with all of the research, all the books, all the scholarly publications, 3 days ago, I get mailed. That's the cover story for Oncology Nursing News this month, or this edition. Of course, I cracked up when I got it. I lost it. Yesterday, I get a call from the editor of another journal, Oncology journal. Dr. Meneses had agreed to write an op-ed piece for the summer edition. We have it almost ready to go to press. Could you please review the galleys and do the final edit to me? And I thought to myself, Karen is still up there generating work, generating deadlines. And so I told him, I said, "Look, I can try to get to it on Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to be able to even look at it until then. I have no idea what it says. It may have been something she talked to me about, or it may not have been." Karen won awards. She was a distinguished lecturer at UAB. What you may not know, and I know some of you do, Gene, you would, She won the highest award, academic award, at another university before she came to UAB, the Pegasus Award, Pegasus Professor Award. So the essence of Karen lies not in that research, however, per se. It was in the lives that she touched. Karen and I we had presentations in Sydney, Australia, the same week. So we decided to go around the world. We went to Seoul, Korea. We went to Sydney. From Sydney, we decided to take a side. Well, from Sydney, we were supposed to go to the South Island in New Zealand, the North Island, to Manila to visit family, to Singapore, to Paris, and then back. But in Sydney, we decided to take a side trip to Alice Springs, Australia. And I don't know how many of you have been to Alice Springs. That's where you go out to Uluru, to Ayers Rock. And so we got off to a wonderful start. We had a great meal. My PETA friends would probably attack me if I told you what we had to eat, but nevertheless, we had a nice meal. We got in the Jeep the next morning. I'm driving, and I immediately turned the curve too quickly, and tea spills all over Karen. We did not get off to a good start. But out of that trip, we come back. Next day, we go to the airport. Airport is a loose definition, is airstrip. There was a woman, this was before we were in Alabama. There was a woman in Huntsville, Alabama, newly diagnosed breast cancer, was struggling to make some decisions. And from Alice Springs, Australia, Karen got on the phone and was on the phone with a lady in Huntsville, Alabama, trying to help her make the decisions. That was Karen. It was very personal, and it was one-to-one. So as I've listened today to all of the accolades and the testimony, Karen would probably, if I can channel her a bit, would be saying right now, go do good. Go do good, Sigrid. And go touch a lot of people. Just that, touch a lot of people and a lot of lives. And I think that ultimately, to me, that is the most important part of Karen's legacy. She certainly touched my life. I'll end by really giving credit to my father. He met Karen. I went back to Seattle, and he called me after I got back, and he said, "Do you have time to talk?" I said, "Yes, sir, sure." "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I just wanted to thank you." And I said, "Okay, why are you thanking me? For what are you thanking me?" And he said, "Well, I want to thank you for introducing me to the singularly most impressive person I've ever met." And that was Karen. And I agree with him. She was singularly the most impressive person I've ever met. Thank you.
You know, we've heard such touching stories and memories. It's kind of hard to sum it up, but I do know there are a number of people that have come a long way today, and I just wanted to make sure that if you wanted to take a moment, we'd give you a few minutes to just share something about Karen. Is there anyone that would like to start that off? Jemiah.
I'm going to try to do good. I don't know how this will go, but I had my notes. And for you guys that know me, typically I don't write things down, but I knew I had to write this one down. So when I started thinking about what I would say, my mind really raced between thoughts of Dr. Meneses as my esteemed mentor, as an international presence in cancer survivorship, and as the toughest critic that I ever encountered outside of looking myself in the mirror. She was small but mighty. She had lots to say about everything under the sun, and she seemed to know quite a lot about everything. I can just remember her talking about moments of history, obscure details of pieces of art, recipes to make quinoa salad, and of course, mechanisms of cancer-related morbidity. And that's where we connected. We were both oncology nurses with a passion for improving the lives of cancer survivors as well as their family members. And when I was deciding whether or not to pursue a DNP or a PhD, I went to her to learn about her journey. And of course, in that meeting, Dr. Meneses told me all about how she successfully built a career around educating survivors to self-manage their lives after cancer. And she told me that I should consider the PhD because she could tell how passionate I was, and she was sure that I could do it. Well, I wasn't sold, much like Sigrid. I wasn't sold at that time because I was a full-time instructor here at UAB, and I knew that I had big girl bills to pay, and I didn't know if I could take that pay cut to be a student again. And just like that, she told me to do the math. I brought her back a figure, and she said, I can do that. We can do that. And I became one of the first full-time students that she had that actually had a chance to work with her in an emergent setting. But I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to work with a pioneer in my field. She taught me to look for the win-win situations, only lending my time to things that would be mutually beneficial. She taught me the power of a research team. Perhaps the biggest and best thing that she ever did was to introduce me to my Birmingham mom, Sylvia Giesiger-Kamada. She always said that Sylvia was the mom and she was the dad. She was the authoritarian who cracked the whip, and Sylvia was the one who was there to nurture us and to make sure that we didn't buckle under the pressure. You see, she was extremely strategic in everything that she did. Every lesson that I learned from her was a necessity to build a program of research and also to find ways to build my own happiness. With her, it was expected that things would change. Papers would be rewritten, sometimes more than 20 times. Events would be reorganized even more. And each red mark on a page or a comment was a roadmap to doing better. And when you finally got that okay from Dr. Meneses, oh, you know you had something stellar. And that meant that you could look forward to seeing her smile and her coin phrase, see, look what you did. Now that my mentor, my mother in the academy, has left her earthly home, I am content that I have the building blocks of greatness because of her lessons. She lives on in my work because I am adapting her breast cancer education intervention for young African American women. She will also live on through me as I strive to be a mentor to those who follow me. I, along with hundreds of others, have attended the KMSW, Karen Meneses School of Winning. Thank you, Dr. McNeese and family for lending her to me. I know there were days and evenings and a lot of early mornings that she was tending to the work of being an associate dean and a PI of multiple community-based projects. Know that it was not in vain, and Dr. Meneses' light will continue to shine through you, through UAB, and all of her mentees. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. Anyone else? First of all, I want to thank everyone who took the time to really think and reflect on Karen and her specialness and the qualities that characterized her. You know, her love of family, her partner Pat, her patients, her teams, her scientific colleagues, her students, her mentees. And she was also part of our executive leadership team here in the School of Nursing. And it's an understatement to say that Karen loved life and lived it to the fullest, because she just shared her gifts and her talents with everyone. She planted and sowed seeds that nurtured her students, her mentees, and her colleagues, holding high expectations. In fact, there were some times in our executive leadership meeting that she would pull out her peer review hat and say, we've got to do it just like a peer review. And we'd all look at her and say, okay. She had a developmental approach to leadership and research, understanding the need for patience, persistence, validation, and resilience. And she played a vital role in helping our school raise its status to the top 10 in this country. Her positive spirit was filled with compassion and a sense of equity and integrity in everything she did. And I have to say, in the words of For Good, because we have known Karen, we've been changed for good. So our charge is to really keep her spirit and her legacy alive in our school as we continue to move forward. As most of you know, we're establishing a memorial fund to honor Karen's life in a meaningful way and sustain her positive and appreciative spirit and compassion. On the tables in back, we have information available about how to contribute to Karen's Legacy Fund to help us create a lasting legacy for her. Also on the table are a take-home remembrance card that really pays tribute to Karen's love of nature and flowers. And at the bottom, if you peel that little butterfly off, you'll have some seeds to plant. And I will tell you, the instructions are there on how to plant them too. We all need that. So first of all, thank you again for attending. Please do stay and enjoy some fellowship and refreshments. And I hope you will enjoy reconnecting with one another, remembering Karen, and connecting with her family. Thank you for coming. And the reception is actually going to be on the side over here, so you can just kind of migrate out, and we're going to celebrate that woman. Okay, thank you.